Buongiorno and hello. Welcome to Costco Wholesale's Leading the Right Way, Costco's cross-cultural leadership program, led by Interim Head of Training, George Mann. Before we begin, congratulations at achieving your new expatriate role as we expand into Italy. At Costco, everything begins with this foundational principle, doing the right thing. Because when we do the right thing, for our members, our employees, our suppliers, our communities, and the environment, good things happen. As leaders, especially when working abroad, our daily decisions and our communication style should reflect this commitment. When we lead with integrity, respect, and care, good things happen. Trust grows, teams collaborate more effectively, and we build long-term relationships that support Costco's global success. Now, for this program, it is designed to prepare you for the realities of leading in Italy. By the end of this training, you'll understand the key cultural dimensions that influence leadership and communication in the Italian workplace. You'll learn how to communicate with clarity and respect across cultural boundaries, and how to motivate and provide feedback in ways that build trust and loyalty. We'll also focus on leading teams that balance Costco's global standards with the norms and expectations of the local Italian culture. Above all else, you'll learn how to represent Costco's values in every interaction, continuing our commitment to doing the right thing as we expand internationally. This brings us to our first foundational pillar, the foundations of cross-cultural communication. What is cross-cultural communication, you may ask? Well, cross-cultural communication is all about how people create and interpret meaning when they come from different cultural backgrounds. It's not just about speaking another language, it's about understanding the values, norms, and expectations that shape how people express themselves. Tone, timing, formality, gestures, and even silence can carry different meanings across cultures. As leaders in Italy, recognizing these nuances is essential for building trust, showing respect, and ensuring your message is received the way you intend. In Italy, communication is seen as a direct reflection of your leadership. It's not what you say, it's how you say it, when you say it, and how the respect you show in the process. Most misunderstandings don't come from difference in goals. They come from differences in tone, timing, and formality. That's why effective communicators in cross-cultural settings stand out. They build trust quickly. They prevent conflict before it starts. And they reinforce Costco's integrity in every interaction. When employees feel heard and respected, they contribute more openly and confidently. Adapting our communication style isn't about changing who you are. It's about doing the right thing and representing Costco the right way as we operate internationally. One of the most important cultural differences to understand is the distinction between low context and high context communications. In low context cultures, like the US, people communicate very explicitly. The meaning in it, the words themselves, and the expectation is that messages should be clear, direct, and taken at face value. On the other hand of the spectrum, you have cultures like the Italians, in which much of the meaning comes from how something is said. The tone, the relationship between the speakers, shared history, and even nonverbal cues. This means that in Italy, communication often carries layers of implied meaning, and it's important to pay attention not just to the words, but to the context surrounding them. What makes effective cross-cultural communication? First, be curious, not certain. Instead of assuming you understand what something or someone means, ask clarifying questions. Curiosity shows respect and prevents misunderstandings. Second, listen beyond words. In Italy, tone of voice, pauses, gestures, and facial expressions often carry just as much meaning as the literal message. Paying attention to these cues helps you understand how a message is truly being received. Third, adapt your delivery. Slow your pace. Provide more background information and use a warm, respectful tone. This helps Italian colleagues feel included and ensures your message lands the way you intend. Fourth, balance honesty with diplomacy. You can still be clear and direct, but phrase feedback in a way that protects dignity and reinforces partnership. Finally, confirm understanding. A simple summary like, to ensure we're aligned, helps prevent mistakes and reassures your team that you value clarity. When we communicate this way, we build trust and avoid unnecessary conflict, and demonstrate Costco's commitment to doing the right thing in every cultural context. This brings us to our first module, communicating across cultures. So, when understanding direct versus nuanced communication, it's important to look at each dimension, starting with message style. In the United States, given that it's a low context society, explicit, concise, and efficiency-oriented conversations and communication are often used. So, when you move over to a country like Italy with a high context in which the language is implicit, layered, meaning depends on tone and relationship due to the extra nuance surrounding it, you need to begin to dig deeper into each word and the messages, being sure to be observant of what you see and hear. For our Costco managers moving abroad, this means we need to avoid blunt directives. Context and tone carry weight. Moving on to formality and hierarchy. In the United States, we often use informal first name greetings and even talk to those that aren't the same rank as us, or often may even be above our own rank. Unlike in the United States, this formal hierarchy plays a bigger role. Titles, greetings, and respectful language signal professionalism and trustworthiness. So, in order to combat this difference, use formal greetings, for example, buongiorno, until invited otherwise. This brings us to nonverbal cues. In the United States, moderate gestures, often being, talking with your hands, waving, or just personal space in general, can take the wayside. We can be a little more personable at times, but in Italy, they take it to a different level. These expressive gestures also help deliver your message. Things like eye contact, timing, and hand gestures carry significant meaning, especially in Italian culture. Especially because these Italian cultures rely on these cues to express emotion, agreement, or hesitation. So it's important that we pick up on these little kind of habits of communication. So, in order to combat this difference, we need to mirror moderate enthusiasm, maintain eye contact, and do all the above to signal a sense of sincerity. This brings us to feedback. In the United States, feedback is often direct and solution-focused. Whereas in Italy, feedback is more diplomatic. Critique is given carefully and often privately, and praise is meaningful but used sparingly. So, in order to combat this U.S. difference between the Italian culture, we need to deliver feedback privately and diplomatically. And also, we need to be sure to explain our reasoning. But I hope as we go through this chart, you're starting to realize that a lot of these dimensions actually build upon one another. So, finally, this brings us to trust building. In the United States, trust building is often transactional and built through our own performance as employees or, whatever other dimension your own relationship with someone has. Whereas for Italians, our trust building their trust building rather, is often very much relationship based. It's built through the consistent personal interaction that Italian workers have with one another, and in turn, These relationships are built on an interpersonal level that is unlike that of the United States. Italians want to actually know the person behind the role, and a few minutes of warm conversation before discussing business goes a very long way. So, understanding these differences hopefully will help us avoid misinterpretations and reinforce Costco's commitment to respectful, culturally aware leadership. So, this brings us to our first interactive activity. Scenario A, where you're having a store leadership meeting. At a new Florence warehouse, a U.S. manager opened a meeting by jumping straight to the numbers. Let's get right to it. Sales are below the target. We need tighter inventory control immediately. While this direct, task-focused approach is normal in the United States, the Italian department heads reacted with discomfort. One later said the tone felt harsh and cold. What happened? Take a few minutes and break off in groups to determine where they went wrong. Awesome. The manager's direct, task-first approach, which is normal in U.S. meetings, ignored Italy's preference for brief relational warm-up and collaborative framing. Instead of actually, taking the time to at least have a little small talk with his Italian counterparts, the American warehouse manager just jumped right into the numbers. This is a major no, because we didn't show a sense of appreciation, and there was no collaborative tone set before getting into the business. What do you think a better approach would be? For the sake of time, I'll answer it myself. But it would have been a better approach for the American warehouse manager to say something a little, less formal, a little informal. Just getting to kind of break the ice a little bit, grazie a tutti for your hard work last week, which is thank you. I know we're still learning this market. Let's look together at a few numbers and see how we can improve our flow. Because also part of going to Italy, you're going to have to learn Italian, which is a great Romance language. So there's your first little bit to nibble on. So, this brings us to our next scenario, scenario B, in which we have a supplier discussion. So, for this scenario, an American procurement lead emails a local olive oil supplier. We need pricing confirmed by Friday, or we'll consider other options. To a U.S. audience, that message might sound efficient and clear, but in Italy, it came across as a threat. The supplier delayed responding and became noticeably distant. So what happened? Break off into teams and answer. Nice. You're correct. The message was very threatening to the Italian counterpart, and it totally bypassed any relational basis that the culture actually relies on heavily. Getting into the numbers is not what we want to do here, because Italians prefer an ongoing dialogue before deadlines. This was just a blunt and honestly disrespectful approach. So, what would a better approach look like? Break off into pairs again and answer the question. Nice. A better approach would be something around the lines of, we're very pleased with your product and hope to confirm our next shipment soon. Could we connect by Friday to review final pricing details together? You see, this is a good version because it still communicates the urgency, but it frames the request with appreciation and collaboration. The key idea is that how we communicate matters just as much as what we communicate, especially when we're building these long-term partnerships that represent Costco. We need to maintain, this awareness that we're in a totally different culture than that of the United States, and this will really fuel our success. So, how can we really implement these newfound practices? Well, first, we want to build rapport before diving into business. In Italy, beginning a meeting with a bit of conversation about family or food or local events isn't small talk. It's how trust is built. When employees and partners feel seen as people, collaboration becomes smoother and more effective. Second, we need to adapt our tone. A warm, expressive tone shows engagement and sincerity, while we still remain professional. Adding a bit more human connection helps our message land in a more positive way. Third, slow the pace. Italians value thoughtful timing. Allow pauses, avoid rushing responses, and give space for reflection. This prevents miscommunication and demonstrates composure and respect. When we apply these practices consistently, we strengthen trust, improve teamwork, and communicate in ways that reflect Costco's commitment to doing the right thing, no matter where we operate. Here are 3 more practices that will help you communicate more effectively in Italy. First, confirm understanding. Ending a conversation with a gentle check, like just to be sure we're aligned, goes a long way in Italy. It ensures clarity without sounding condescending and helps prevent misunderstandings before they even happen. Second, use written follow-ups wisely. Written summary should support the conversation, not replace it. In relationship-driven cultures, verbal dialogue is essential for building trust. A written follow-up simply reinforces what was agreed upon and provides a helpful record. Third, we need to respect the hierarchy. When you're unsure, direct your questions or feedback through the appropriate channel. This avoids unintentionally bypassing someone's role and helps maintain harmony and respect within the team. These small but important adjustments help you build credibility, protect relationships, and demonstrates Costco's commitment to respectful, culturally aware leadership. To close this module, let's take a moment to reflect on how these concepts connect to our own communication style. First, I'd like for y'all to recall a time when a message you sent was misunderstood. What cultural assumptions, yours or the other person's, might have shaped that outcome? This helps you identify blind spots and patterns, so just take a minute and answer that question. Okay, now that we're done with the first question, let's move on to the second one. So, write one specific adjustment you will make in your daily communication with Italian team members. It could be slowing your pace, adding more context, or beginning meetings with relational warmth. Small intentional changes can have a big impact. So just take a minute, write one down. Nice, good answers. So, for the final reflection exercise, pair with another expatriate manager to role play a meeting opening using both US and Italian styles and discuss which feels more natural and why. Also, be sure to note what the exact changes you make are, because it's helpful to have a record moving forward when you're actually in Italy. So discuss these for a second. Good answers. So let's wrap up this first module. Hopefully from this first module, you're able to understand that communication in Italy is relationship driven. And the effectiveness of this relationship and communication depends on how you speak to Italians. And it's less on actually what you say. They're kind of equal in a sense, but your delivery is very important and often can speak just as much, if not more, than the actual message you want to deliver. Second, we need to remember to have a sense of warmth and respect, along with patience when creating trust. It's essential to efficiency in Italian business settings because they're so heavily relational or relationship based. And as leaders, our goal is to honor Costco's principle of doing the right thing by listening first, adapting tone, and promoting clarity through empathy. We just need to use all of our newfound actionable practices and awareness of the differences between American and Italian culture to lead in a newfound market. So, before we move on to Module 2, let's take a short break. Thank you.